Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another video. This video is going to be a difficult video for me to shoot because I would like to address a big health problem I have been struggling for the majority of my life, which devastated my life in my middle 20s. And I think in order to understand where it came from and how it developed, I need to give you a little bit more background of my world, my experience as a child. So I do believe and I do think that I have always been a highly sensitive person. I am over-emotional, I am oversensitive, I react in the extremes, from extreme sadness to extreme happiness to extreme upsetness. And what triggers that is, in other people's eyes, not really trigger worthy of the level of upsetness that it escalated in. And needless to say that it was difficult for me as a child. And I think my parents overlooked the fact that there was definite signs of being a little bit different and just continued treating me the same and basically bulldozing over my personality, and in the process causing so much more damage than what they ever could have imagined. So in the olden days, we worked on standards. You were in sub A, sub B, standard 1, and then you go to standard 10, which we also called matric. Nowadays, it's grade 1 to up to grade 12, and then that is when you leave school. Sub A and sub B, grade 1 and grade 2, I can't remember much of. But in grade 3, standard 1, we had a teacher. It was a Mrs. Viljoen. And she did the strangest things to discipline the children in her class. Now, you are about 8 years old at that point in time, and I was a year too young for my standard. So I would have been, we went to school at 6, so I probably would have went to school at 5, so I would have been 7. I would have been 7 at that point in time. And she had a table in the front of the class, and the preschool children normally sit on very small chairs for little kids. It's not a desk like you have in the bigger standards. And on this table, she has put one of these little chairs, and then there was either a raw potato, or a bottle. I don't know if there was disinfectant in or whatever, but it was a bottle of water with a dummy in, what we call a dummy, a pacifier in. So if you did something wrong in her class that needed discipline, you had to go and sit. Fortunately, that never happened to me, but I experienced it in the highest level of emotional upsetting me, disturbing me. So much so that, apart from the fact that I hated going to school and just wanted to stay at home, school became a place where I was afraid to go to school. I did not want to go to school. My stress levels were through the roof. Then you had to sit on that little chair, either with the potato in your mouth, or you had to suck on the pacifier. And you sit with a biggish raw potato in your mouth for about an hour of the day as a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old child, and see how tired your mouth is going to become. Then she had this thing, if you were a good little pupil, student, then you could sit under her table where she would do her preparations and her marking, and then you were allowed, it was then your treat to scratch her legs. So you must sit there and you must scratch her legs up and down all the time. And she had a little bell in her class, which she rang when somebody did something wrong. Then who knows who's going to be the recipient of her punishment tactics. And then when you're in that grade or that standard, you have a lot of mat work that you do, where you go and sit on a mat for storytelling. And then you had to stand on one leg if you did something wrong with your hands in the air. And storytelling could be a whole hour of the day, and she would let you stand like that for the whole hour of the day. And I can remember this girl, her name was Jackie. I can't remember her surname, but I can remember Jackie very well. She was standing with her hands in the air on one leg, and she needed to go to the toilet. And she asked if she could leave the classroom. And she was told no, that she was looking for an excuse not to stand on one leg with her hands in the air anymore. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this video. And she was denied, and she wet her pants. Needless to say that I would go home in an emotional state of absolute upsetness. So on the one occasion, we got maths homework, which wasn't explained to us properly in the class. And that was it was much more difficult than what we were supposed to do in grade 3, in standard 1. And I don't know if that is where my maths blockage came from. That I just can't seem to get over the fact figures, I can't do figures. It petrifies me. I did finish a business management diploma, a 3-year extensive business management diploma, which I passed it cum laude, and I was going to convert it into a business management degree, of which I finished 2 subjects. I had 2 subjects to go, which was strategic business management and research methodology. And I uh, applied to do research methodology first. No, I applied to do the strategic management for first, and not research methodology. If I did research methodology first, I probably only would have had one subject still to go. But then I registered for strategic business management, and for strategic business management, I had to be in a business environment. I had to work for a company, and at that stage, I was at home, and you could not finish the course, or you could not finish that specific subject unless you were in a business working environment. And for that reason, I've got 2 subjects outstanding to have completed my business management degree. But I've got accounts 4. I had a phobia for accounting in high school as well, for a similar reason and a similar teacher. But with the help of my middle sister, I did finish accounts 4, and I did financial management 4. And there's a few subjects that needed you to work with figures. But I used to fail maths at school. And we were sent home to do this maths, and I couldn't do the maths. And my dad wasn't a very patient person because he was extremely intelligent. And he was trying to explain this to me, which I could not understand, because the basic foundation of maths, to be able to do those problems, weren't laid yet at that point in time. And so my dad started to become impatient and losing his temper with me. And then it's a whole blow up at home. And my mom phoned the principal, because then I was hysterical. And the next day they went to see the principal, because now I didn't want to go to school, because I did not want to be put on the chair with a dummy or a potato in my mouth. So you can just imagine what happened in the house and with me at that point in time. And going to the principal didn't help the situation, because that now meant that I'm going to be targeted. That woman is going to hate me, because she was now called into the principal's office, and a whole blown up situation now developed around this whole thing. She was then actually in the end suspended, I think in the 2nd term or the 3rd term, I can't remember, but she did not stay there for the whole year. But I think by then the damage was already done. I wasn't the only child that suffered. There were other children, equally sensitive children, I would imagine, which also took it very personally and also went through a lot of stress. I remembered a boy with the name of Paul who stuttered, and I think that his parents also in the end lodged a complaint against this teacher. Now you must understand that I've got 2 bigger sisters. I'm a little bit behind them, 5 and 4 years respectively. Now my elder sister is extremely musical. She was born with perfect pitch. Now if you make music your career, perfect pitch is like being born with a golden spoon in your mouth, because everything is just so much easier. I don't know why people always try to make things difficult in life for people if they must progress through grades or standards or exams. It always ends up becoming something that it shouldn't be, in my opinion. Not really testing the person's knowledge, trying to make it just that little bit more difficult. So if you now do a music exam, it's not just how well you can play your scales, which shows your technique, which is a good basis to have, obviously, if you play technical, difficult pieces. You now have sight reading, which means they test you, they put a piece of music that you've never seen before in front of you. You get 1 or 2 minutes to look through it. You're not allowed to put your hands on the piano and play it. And then you must play it, and then you get a mark for it. I am not sure what logic there is behind that test. It might make it a little bit easier for you to learn your pieces from scratch faster in a shorter period of time. But if it's really a very difficult piece, you always break it up by doing the right hand first, and then you get to know your left hand first, and then you put the piece together. So it's not really that you have to go and play it together from the very beginning. So why do you have sight reading? Nobody goes to a concert to perform something without spending hours and hours and hours and hours of preparing and practicing. It's never expected of you to just go and walk onto a stage and entertain people with music you've never seen before, when they have paid a lot of money to come and listen to you, or to come and listen to the orchestra. So it doesn't make sense to me. And there's a difference between sight reading and improvisation. You will go to a jazz concert and you will listen to people improvise. But that's not sight reading. That's just people that has got this amazing talent to just feel and hear these harmonies in their heads. That is, if you are not musical and you cannot play 2 or 3 notes off by hearing, then I suppose you will not appreciate what talent it is to improvise. It really is. But in any case, so then you have oral, where there's now a whole lot of things that get played for you. There's a rhythm that gets played for you that you must clap back. Then there is a melody that's played for you that you must sing back. Now, I don't need to have a good pitch if I'm going to play piano, because the piano is tuned for me. I might need a good ear, pitch-wise, if I play violin or flute or an instrument where your pitch can be off the note if you don't place it correctly on your mouth and you don't blow with the right angle, or you don't put your finger in the correct position on the string. So then there's that test. Then if you if you do music as a subject, that this is now not your exam that you play to advance from grade 1 to grade 8. Then if you do music as a subject, there's something called dictation, where something is played for you on the piano, and then you must actually try and write the notes down, the correct notes on the staff. And if you don't have an ear, it's almost impossible to do. You always get a very bad mark for that section. Why? Why do I need to do a dictation, quick notation of what somebody else plays on an instrument? That's now the example that I give. It's like when they give your matric, your grade 12 maths exam, for instance. That paper they make so long that no matter how well, and the science paper normally works the same way, no matter how well you know your work, you must work at such a pace to get that paper finished that you don't even have time to think, to go back to see if you maybe struggle with a problem. You must leave the problem, you must go on to the next, otherwise you're not going to finish your paper. Where do you need to work that fast with figures in real life, in a job? I don't understand the logic behind it. Why must people always try and make things unnecessarily complicated or difficult when it should be a simple test of whether you know your work and whether you understand the material at hand? Comprehension. Well, that was now music exams. So my older sister's got perfect pitch, which means she has got an inborn memory of the exact pitch of any note. So if the bird whistle in the garden, she can tell you it is a B flat, the octave above middle C on the piano, and she will be correct. You can go and test it. She will be on point. My dad used to play games with her if we're driving on holiday or in the car and the fire engine comes past. In those days it went beep boop, so there's two notes, and then he will ask her, what's the notes? And she would be able to tell him the exact two notes that siren was making. And that gave him great pleasure. He was very, very proud of her, and she made music her career, which means that composition, dictation, oral, singing back when a melody is played as part of your oral test to you and you must sing it back, all those things is just second nature to her. She doesn't even have to think about it. Then my middle sister was born with, or I must say was gifted with being extremely talented and clever with figures, maths, accounting, everything. She was basically good in everything. She was a good speaker. She also did music because we all had to do music, except for Irina. Obviously, it was her obvious choice. Renelle did music as a subject till matric. And I was forced to do music. I wasn't really forced to do, I had to do maths and science, so I mustn't say too quickly that I wasn't forced to do that as well. But I suppose music is something that you can learn like a parrot, where maths and accounting, you either have that talent or you don't. It's not really, if your mind doesn't work in maths, it's not really something that you can go and teach yourself to be good. Well, I did with my business management. I did, but I never took a job, an accounting job, or a job that I had to work with figures after that. And now I've become so rusted that I can't even remember, which I regret. Very much so. Because I will have to basically go and learn everything from scratch if I want to go and work in that field. But in a way I did, but I did not feel myself competent enough, good enough to work with other people's tax and other people's books and not make errors. Crazy. But that's the reality of the situation. So I had to do music at school. And obviously the younger you start, the better you actually are as an adult. That was in grade 4. My mom said that I must start with music, taking piano. Same thing. The teacher did not like me. And if your hand position wasn't right on the piano, she had a ruler that she would hit you over your knuckles with. I did not want to go into that classroom for my half an hour music lesson. I was petrified. If I knew that tomorrow it was my time to go for a music lesson, my stomach was in knots. I was a nervous wreck. Now you must remember, I'm 8 years old. 8 years old. What do you do if you hate something? Do you run home and go and sit behind the piano and, I want to play the piano all day long? I want to practice. It's all I want to do. I want to practice piano. No. You become petrified. You hate it. You don't want anything to do with it. You just want it to stop. You just want that whole situation to end. I became a complete and total nervous wreck. Then, after many fights with the teacher and the principal of the school, because now my mother was in competition with some of the other mothers, doctors' wives, ministers, pastors' wives, their children. And how can I now not be able to go and play a music exam because the teacher refused to enter me for a music exam? So I was taken out of school, the music program of the school, and I had to then start to take music lessons privately. A dear old retired lady. But that didn't change much, did it? It didn't change the fact that I now have started to doubt myself and not wanting to do music. I hated it. I was a nervous wreck and I didn't practice. I didn't want to practice. I didn't like it. I didn't feel myself good enough to do this. I felt myself incompetent. And I find it was a stress-inducing. So then the first examination comes. Now you must go in. If you now have performance anxiety, you must now go and play your pieces, your scales, go through these oral tests, the sight reading, and in front of an examiner. And in those days, you had to play one piece off by heart. I don't have perfect pitch. The notes mean nothing to me. And because I get so tensed and work up, I will forget my notes. And then your whole piece is messed up and you get a bad mark for it. I wasn't good with the oral section of the music exam that took place, because I do not have an ear. And it just became a very stressful situation. I actually, in my very, very young years, the very elementary exams that I played, I would often start to cry in the exam room. Often. I think, if not every single time. And that irritated the person that was taking the exam. They got highly irritated with pathetic little people that's got no confidence, because I suppose as a musician, you must have confidence. You must have a lot of self-confidence. You can't be pathetic and forget your notes or not remember your notes, because there's so much adrenaline being released in your body. And then there's also our state fits that you had to do, that I wasn't good enough to be entered into our state fits, but the doctor's wife's child was entered into our state fit, and the pastor's children was entered in our state fit, and that one with lots of money was entered into the state fit. So I also had to be entered into the state fit. Now you go onto a stage and you play certain music pieces, and then you can get a gold star if it was a diploma if you were more than excellent, a gold star if you were excellent, a silver star if you were good, a bronze star if it was okay, and then you had a black star if you are just absolutely pathetic. And if I did not produce that gold star or a silver star, then all hell broke loose at home. The one thing that I was good at was athletics. I started to run in grade 4. I also started to play flute in grade 4. And I was a good sprinter. So I sprinted grade 4, 5, 6, 7 in elementary school, primary school. We call it primary school. But I always used to get the fright of my life when the pistol gun, starter gun, went off, and I lost some precious seconds out of the starting blocks. So that wasn't good enough for my father. So and I always used to run barefoot. So he got me starting blocks, which I hated. I didn't want to use starting blocks. I had to get spikes, the running shoes with the spikes in. That was in those days, that was the latest and the greatest innovation. Starting blocks and spikes came out when I was in grade 4, 5, 6, round about there, because I went through that stage in South Africa. I don't know if I had it overseas already, but in South Africa. And my dad bought himself a starting pistol, and we had to go to the sports field that was close to our house. It was actually where my dad used to go. There was a clubhouse, and my dad used to go and play squash there a lot. And he took me there, and I had to start with that starting gun over and over and over again. And I can honestly tell you that it didn't help. It didn't solve the problem. Because by that time, I was an insecure, petrified little girl. I broke the records, but the day before a big sporting event, the next day, I had diarrhea. I had the shakes. I felt this lame feeling in my legs. um, at the starting blocks, and it became a very stressful, anxiety-provoking, horrible experience for me. And then at one point, my middle sister also did a little bit of athletics, and she had a pair of spikes, and I was still fighting the wearing of spikes issue to do sprinting, because my dad believed that I would run faster with spikes, and I preferred to go barefoot. And we were at one of these training sessions of my father, and this was the day before this athletic event the next day, and it was interprovincial, so it was a very important, very big athletic event. And my sister, by accident, stepped on my bare foot with her spike, and my foot was injured quite badly. And I had to soak my foot in salt water, and it swelled up, and I had to run the next day with that foot. I did run one of my best times ever, but still, I had to go and run with a foot which was stepped on with a spike shoe. Then in grade 6, so now my whole relationship with school, teachers, music exams, performing on stage, everything is by now completely and totally messed up. I've got a nervous problem. I'm completely messed up in my head. So I don't understand if pupils or students or children don't do their homework. And I'm sure that in everybody's life, there's at least one incident where you did not do your homework for the next day. I actually most of the time then later on ended up not doing my homework because I think for what happened. But I think most of us have got at least one story that we can tell that we did not do our homework. And I forgot to do this one picture that we had to draw for a history class. And I traced it very quickly. I don't know if it was late the previous night or early that morning before school. And it was now not a Picasso. It was done, but not good. And I can't draw. For the life of me, I can't draw. I can't draw a stick man. My mom is very arty, but I can't sketch. I can't draw. Once again, not one of my talents. My middle sister is quite talented as far as that's concerned. She used to do the most beautiful. We got tasks which was based on a theme, and I can remember she did this task on birds, and how she came up with it was really a magnificent piece of work. I must say, I can still remember when we were sitting at the dining room table doing that. She went very late into the night doing that. And it wasn't the best picture that I now presented there. And we were lined up in the front of the class, And then the humiliation session starts. Every single child that now did not do their homework at all, or whose picture was now not of the highest quality, were humiliated and belittled in front of the whole class for about 10 minutes each. And then I start to cry. Then you start to cry in front of the whole class, which is the whole purpose of the teacher. He's aiming for that to happen. And then he will gun for you a little bit more, because now you cry. He has achieved what he actually wanted to. So now he's just sort of twisting that little knife that he's got in your back a little bit more, because now he's got the attention of the rest of the people. Now he has achieved, you nicely humiliated. You now stepped right into this trap that he has set for you. And then I can't get to I can't calm myself down again. Then I must go home. My mom must come and fetch me. I must go home, because I would not be able to calm myself down. I've started to cry, and in my mind, I am the most horrific, in my mind, I was the most horrific, pathetic, terrible, disappointing person out. Then there was an incident in grade 7 where I sat in the back of the class, and the teacher, that was a Mrs. Lutz, had her little girl in the class. The little girl wasn't in school. I don't really know what her girl did in class. In fact, now to come to think of it, her girl shouldn't have been in that class. But it was a beautiful little girl, really a pretty little girl with blonde hair, little curls. She had it in 2 ponytails, huge blue eyes, this rosebud mouth, and she was eating a cake, a cook sister. Overseas people won't know what is a cook sister, but she was eating a cook sister, which is like a sweet treat. And I thought that was because the little cheeks were standing like this, and it was really, really, she was really enjoying this treat. And I thought it was the most gorgeous thing out. And I laughed, and I think I must have mentioned it to whoever sat next to me or in front of me, that they must also look how cute this is looking. And the teacher asked me, "Why are you talking and laughing?" And first I didn't want to say, and she made me stood up, and I had to say, and I said, because, and once again I didn't choose the right words, because I said, the little girl is looking so funny, eating the cook sister. Maybe I should have said cute, but cute is not really an Afrikaans word. I don't know if cute would have been in my vocabulary, or if it was something that would have just sprang up in my mind at that age to explain something like that. That woman became red in her face, and she started to climb into me. What type of person am I to say that to a little girl like this? And how can I upset this little girl? And look what you have now done. And she carried on with me for about half an hour. I was so rattled. I was so upset. I was so distraught. Once again, I started to cry, and I could not get control over myself again. My mom had to come and fetch me. I had to go home. I didn't want to go to school the next day. I did not want to go to school the next day. So my question is, and I'm going to end this video here, because I think it's important to know what happened to me, that I ended up with chronic fatigue syndrome. or myalgia encephalitis, which was the name it had before it was called chronic fatigue syndrome. And the name before that was yuppie flu. Because I think there's a reason for it, and I think this is the reason for it. I can't understand for the life of me, thinking back, how two parents, my mother and my father, could think to themselves that it was fine and okay to force their little girl to do things against her will after incidents that has happened that has caused certain damage. If they can see the level of stress, of being frightened, of being scared, of anxiety, when I must now face public performance, when I must face people, because I have become socially phobic by then. I was scared of people. I did not want to be around people. I had no faith that or a sense of security among adult people. Why would my mom put me through forcing me to do music, forcing me to do music exam after music exam? I stayed fit after I stayed fit. I have to go to all these athletic meetings and do sprinting. If you can see what it is doing to your child, why don't you listen? Why don't you listen when your child say, "No, mommy, please, I don't want to do that. I don't enjoy that. I don't feel that it's my field of expertise. It's not my love to do that. It's not giving me any enjoyment. Please, I don't want to do that." Why do you force your child and put them through that if you love them? And then expect that no damage is going to be done to that person's personality, that person's adjustment, that person as a forming adult, that person is going to come out a very stable, well-adjusted person in the end. And that's just my primary school career, my elementary school career. I haven't now even entered secondary school, high school. I'm going to save that for another video because I find this emotionally very draining, to be quite honest. So if you made it this far in the video, I say thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you for another video.